Do you run a community interest company? CICs are one of those unusual entities for many people. They fall somewhere between a limited company and a charity. And one of the most regular things, if you sit on any of the internet resources like Ask the Public, that gets asked about CICs is, I'm a director, can I pay myself? Well, today I'm going to answer that question. The short answer, if you haven't got time, is yes, you can, but you've got to do it properly. Doing it properly is, in many cases, PAYE. You are going to have to make sure that you actually have a payroll set up for your community interest company, your CIC, and that it is set with you earning a regular amount of money. Now that can change, but it can't change willy-nilly, and you can't just draw cash out of the bank and stick it in your pocket and hope for the best. You've got to have a set reason. It's got to be reasonable. It's got to be representative of the effort and energy that you actually put into your CIC. Now, in many cases, I know the CICs take massive amounts of effort and energy. I personally run a CIC outside of accountancy, and it seems to take up far more energy than my accountancy job often does. But at the same time, is it reasonable in the activity that I'm doing if I actually pay myself a substantial amount of money from it? And the answer is quite clearly going to be no, because the revenue that my CIC generates and the work that it does is clearly not earning the same as a commercial business can. So your CIC that you are there for is very able to pay you, but it can't pay you, as I say, dividends. Now, in occasional circumstances, some obscure types of CICs can pay some dividends, but most CICs are set up as companies by guarantee. What that means is no one individual actually owns them. The guarantee is usually 3 or 4 people. We always recommend 4 people being involved in a CIC for the simple fact of, if you have other jobs going on and other things happening, you don't necessarily want to link those. One problem that can happen is if you have a commercial business and you have a CIC for something else that you do, if there are not enough people involved in that CIC, it can be considered part of the day job for HMRC purposes. So get 4 people involved. They all guarantee that in the event of something happening, they all pay a set figure, usually £1, and you have a company by guarantee. That is the majority of CICs in the UK, and certainly the majority of those that we work with. There is an exception, as I've said. If it is by guarantee, dividends are not payable, it is on salary. And I get an enormous number of hits on a number of items and articles I've written on our own website about making that salary. Well, there's no mystic to it. It is a salary commensurate and representative of the work that you're doing. That is often individual planning. There's no set figure, and it's not something I can say definitely on this video you should charge this, but you will need to run it properly. You'll need an RTI system. RTI is real-time information. That means you are going to have to run it regularly at a set point and transfer information across to HMRC. If you don't transfer that information across to HMRC at that set point, it's considered to be a failure. A failure built up to enough penalty points becomes a fine. So if you're not familiar with payroll and it's not something that you do regularly, I wouldn't suggest rushing out buying software for it. You'll find that the software that you'll have to buy in order to run payroll is often going to be a lot more expensive than just getting a payroll agency or an accountant to actually just run the payroll for you. To give you an idea, we charge £25 a month if we're running a director's payroll. Across the course of a year, that's going to be 300 quid. That is as cheap as the cheapest payroll software I am aware of. There are some payroll softwares built into other types of accounting products, but again, if you're not familiar with how to use them and don't know how they actually work and don't know the quirks and the things that can go wrong, is it really worth it, the effort and energy in trying to learn those? Now, sometimes it will be, and if that's the route you're doing, I wish you every success with it. Something to remember though is, on top of that payroll, you also have actual direct expenses. Now, the expenses are different to the payroll. It's not just money that you take out. This is something that you have directly spent for the purposes of the trade and activity of your CIC. A classic example in my own CIC, I run a karate club through a CIC, is I hire coaches. Now, I often just stick the coach on my own personal credit card, my own debit card, and I organise that we then get a group of us to be taken to a competition on that coach. The coach cost for the day can be £70–80. It's something that I can reclaim from the CIC because I've directly spent it out of my own pocket. Now, it is easier if you have a debit card to have the debit card used directly to that bank account, but it's not always convenient and you can't always get debit cards on CIC bank accounts. Increasingly, the high street doesn't want to offer CIC's bank accounts at all, despite what they may say. My experience is that there's only 1 or 2 banks that actually will do it. And even then, debit cards can be difficult to get hold of. So if I am claiming the expense, I need to make sure I've got a receipt and I need an expenses form. Now, there's a million templates across the internet for the expenses form. Make sure you use one that's related to the UK, not the US or Europe, and fill it in fully. Full details of what it was there for, full details of why you did it. Put the receipt with that expenses form in old money, physically staple it together. If it's new money, it's a PDF that you are attaching to it. You need to then make payment to yourself from the bank account of exactly the amount that is on the expenses form, and you then need to be clear as to why that expense was incurred. That amount, if it's an expense, is not taxable, unlike the payroll. The payroll is, it's something that you are directly getting as a benefit to you for the work that you're doing. The other things that people often ask about in these is, well, I've worked super hard this year and we've got an excess of income and I'd like to give myself something extra to it. Well, the governance of a CIC is that those involved in the CIC have to agree to it. If you've got 4 members, you've got 4 people who are overseeing it, they would have to actually confirm that the extra you're giving yourself is appropriate, earned, and it would be considered to be a bonus. And again, it would go through a payroll system. The mechanics of that would simply be inform the person running the payroll. If that's yourself, fine. Record what it is that is being awarded to you, record the reasoning why, get a board minute for that, have it signed off by all of those different members of the CIC, and then put the gross amount onto the payroll and calculate tax in the usual way. The key in all CICs is to make sure that you document what is happening, that you've got a record of what it is. There should be no question mark as to what has actually gone on. If in doubt, write it down. Now again, as I often say on these videos, writing it down doesn't mean a paper file anymore. It can well be a PDF document that you save into a Dropbox folder. But it's often easier to imagine it as having a book with reasons written into it. If you have a record of those, a minute book, however format that is, that you can clearly look back and see why decisions were done and why things were undertaken and what was paid when, it becomes much easier for everybody, be that the regulator of CICs, be that your accountant who is looking at it, or just yourself. It also has transparency, which is the purpose of all CICs. You are doing something that is for the benefit of a community. It's not just a commercial enterprise. Now, that touches on the main points of this subject. The articles on our website goes into a much more depth, and as ever on all CICs, I would steer you towards my book. My book, Built to Serve, is available on Amazon. It's also available on my author website, robert-newman.co.uk, and available through CCM's website. Because I am a partner at Carter Collins & Meyer, we're a firm of accountants in Manchester working with all sorts of businesses, but particular interest in CICs across Greater Manchester, Lancashire, Cheshire, and nationwide. We've got clients all over the place on CICs, and my book, Built to Serve, often is the first point of reference for all of them.